So welcome to our Equity in Action Praxis session. So thankful that you're all here with us. Just a couple reminders before we get started and things for us to think about. So we've been doing our Equity in Action Praxis sessions for the summer. And before folks arrive, we invite them to do a little bit of reading on how do we set some community norms and expectations for each other. And so over the summer, folks have been adding expectations, things that we want to surface. And part of our thinking here is that, you know, we all have these really powerful experiences of being in community and expectations. And when we don't make them transparent, when we don't talk about them, then we just allow the dominant ways of being to continue dominating. So we'll invite you to read over these, make note of questions that you might have. Feel free to surface them in our chat. And so I'll give you a minute just to read them over. So we want to thank everyone who's contributed to our norms, and we want to ask all of us to be mindful so that we can put these norms in action in our interactions today. And again, if you have questions, comments, feel free to put them in our chat. So what is Praxis? Praxis, Paulo Freire talked about it in Pedagogy of the Oppressed as reflection and action upon the world in order to transform it. And so in our Equity in Action Praxis sessions, our goal is really to highlight the considerable amount of work that's taking place in California community colleges to forward equity, equality, and social justice. Oftentimes, we hear just from theorists, we hear from amazing folks, but there's a lot of amazing work that is happening by practitioners. And so we want to give practitioners an opportunity to share how they're weaving both reflection and theory and knowledge into action, to show us how they're transforming their colleges, their work with students into more equitable learning environments. And we are fortunate today to have with us Monica Lopez from Cerritos College, who is going to talk to us about the fierce urgency of libraries now. So thank you, Monica, for being here with us.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lauren and Keelan. I hear an echo. Maybe, I don't know if that's me. Okay, we're good. So what I have prepared is a PowerPoint, and I'm going to kind of walk through it. So I'm going to start sharing. Okay, I think I'm good there. Like I said, thank you, Lauren. You were one of our facilitators for Equity 101 way back in the pre-COVID time. So this is, I've lost track of time, and it feels so odd now. But thank you, everyone who was joining us today. I really want to talk about my journey through the Equity 101 course and my praxis or my plan in terms of what I came up with because of my experience with Equity 101. I have a quick agenda, just to talk a little bit about myself and a little about what I do. Briefly talk about Equity 101 and some of the work that I did through Equity 101, my praxis project, and a very quick sample of equity practices list. And then I've posed a question there that we'll go back to towards the end. So I've been a librarian for almost 20 years, like a professional librarian. I've been at Cerritos College for about 16 years, or it is 16 years now. And like most community college library and librarians, we teach courses, we do workshops, we share in the shared governance committees, we promote student success, obviously. But my primary responsibilities in the library are to coordinate the collection development program, and I work alongside an assistant buyer, and obviously my colleagues help me spend the funds that we usually receive during the fiscal year. Personal, I am a first gen, the term, if you've been familiar with the first gen term, college student. I attended Fullerton College first, which is community college. So I am a product of community college. And I transferred to Cal State Fullerton after that. And I earned my BA in Spanish and a minor in Latin American studies. So originally I thought I was going to be a teacher or something in education. I wasn't really sure. But through that journey, I worked in libraries. Libraries helped me pay for college, and libraries were a second home for me. So I learned a lot of my work ethic from working in libraries. So then it was very natural for me to become a librarian. So I received my MLIS from San Jose State when it was on the ground. I say when it was on the ground because it's completely online now. And that was in the late 90s. um, so I completed that through Cal State Fullerton. Also, I'm a daughter of an immigrant. My mom identifies as Chicana, so she was born here, but her parents were immigrants. And I identify then as Chicana, Latinx, and a person of color. And I think I really want to talk about real quickly here about one of the reasons why I became a librarian and what really drove me to choose the path of a librarian. And I think it was very personal for me to decide to want to help students, want to get the information out to them. I really felt like it was important to give back. And I think with my background with a Spanish language and just my own cultural background, it was a seamless, I think, path for me. And I think I didn't know then what I know now, that it was very social justice driven, why I decided to become a librarian. I didn't know then, but obviously I know now. And so that's really been helpful with my journey in terms of equity. So some of the goals that I had for taking Equity 101, I really want to share a little bit about that in terms of my own experience and why I chose. It actually came from an event on my campus. And here's one of those things when we go back to the norms that Lauren was sharing in the beginning about being vulnerable and about sharing things from our own campuses, outside, sort of like you hear the term airing your dirty laundry with other places. But it's important for me to give you a context. You know, I attended an event. I was really excited about equity on our campus, and I attended an event, and I think all the intentions were there. It was put together, you know, from a lot of different groups, a lot of constituency groups, the faculty, and I think the intention was great, but I felt like I really wasn't getting what I was hoping I was going to get from that equity event on campus. And the speakers were great, everybody, but I think at the end of the day, I felt like my questions weren't being answered, and so that drove me to wanting to know more. So that's why I went ahead and enrolled in Equity 101, and I went through all the channels, obviously, with asking my dean for permission to, you know, participate and so on and so forth, like most of us do. But I wanted to share that because I think it's very important why we're all driven by different reasons to do different things. And so this is my journey, and I really want to really stress that as I'm talking and sharing, is that these are things that I've done based on my experiences. This is what I did. This is my praxis. This is my own. It doesn't mean that you have to do it. It doesn't mean that you have to follow any, you know, like subscribe things that I'm saying. I'm just sharing my journey and the experiences that I had or have by taking Equity 101. Some of the learning outcomes, if we're all familiar with learning outcomes, I had a couple. Obviously, I looked at 101 as gaining more tools in my tool belt, really building on that equity framework, you know, and so that I could help students at Cerritos College. So that was like one of the main goals. And then obviously gain insights from colleagues through rich dialogue. And like Lauren said earlier, you know, we are all experts. We're so many experts. Yeah, we have, you know, theorists and individuals out in the field. I mean, oh my gosh, there's still so many that I don't even know about. There's still so many that people say, oh, have you heard of this? And or have you heard of that? Or have you read this person? I'm like, I have no clue. I need to write that down. I need to get that book. I need to, you know, to do more homework and work on it. But bottom line is, I see it as helping students because they become global citizens. You know, they go out, and especially right now during the pandemic. I mean, when I first started putting this presentation together, I mean, really, I started putting it together, and I hadn't even thought about what was happening now and having to adjust it. Obviously, we all adjust, we all pivot, we all kind of look at what's happening now in our classrooms, online, in our libraries, in terms of what's happening now. Before I go into the equity audit, which is one particular, one specific activity that we did in Equity 101, without giving you everything about equity and not, giving it away, but you do an equity audit, and it really is personal. It really, I took it very personal that you kind of look introspectively at what it is that you do, whether it's your teaching, whether it's your interaction with students, with the community, with fellow colleagues. And so I really focused on my own experience in terms of information. Since I'm not teaching currently one of the courses, I'm doing workshops, obviously I'm presenting, I'm learning, I'm in committees. So I really focus my praxis then on the things that I'm doing right now, not necessarily the curriculum from the course that we teach at Cerritos College, or your information literacy courses that you teach, but I took it more as the day-to-day things that I do, the interactions that I do and have with my colleagues, with community members, with students. And so that's sort of what I focused on. And so this next screen actually shows a sampling. I wanted to share a sampling of things that I pulled out from my own equity audit. So things that I want to do, like avoid ambiguous statements and directions. I mean, you can read the screen, some of the things that I pulled out that I learned from myself from this audit. Encourage students to explore new ideas and approaches to problem solving. They're very simple things that I felt like, wow, these are things that I can do. I can do right away, or I can sort of gradually start to, apply them. And so I think when you do an equity audit, whether you take 101, Equity 101, or just, you can Google equity audit, obviously, and try to start doing the work now, you'd be surprised when you do an introspective sort of audit of what it is that you do on a daily basis. And so let's get to the Praxis project. And again, this is my action plan. I really want to stress that that's my own action plan that came from my 7 weeks. It was 7 weeks, right, Lauren? I kind of look back in my, it was 7 weeks, way back in early, it was March and April, and we ended right when everything started shutting down. Like, I think everybody was like, we're just trying to get the work done, and everybody was already at home, and we were just like, oh my God, we want to get this work done, because obviously this is important. Equity work is important. So I just wanted to really focus on make you all aware of that. And then also in guiding my own praxis or my own action plan is the question of how do I begin to examine closely what it is that's happening on campus, identifying specific equity issues that control my library or a classroom or the campus. So really that question guided me through putting together what exactly I wanted to do. So what I'm going to show you next is really very specific to me in terms of what I decided to do based on the experience from Equity 101, which is a course. Equity 101 is a course that you can take through 3CSN. And I'm not trying to plug it in or anything, but that's basically what I did. And so it really gave me an opportunity to really come up with something so that I can put it into action. As you can see, I'm focusing right away in library work. So I do this already. I work with an assistant buyer in terms of when we purchase materials, we want to make sure they're accessible. If you're all in community colleges, I don't know if there's some of the participants today that are from universities. I just know from community college, what we know, we're really driven by federal law in terms of making sure that everything that we purchase in terms of media, for example, and that we present in classrooms, whether it's online now or in a classroom setting, it needs to be accessible. It has to have captions, and so on and so forth. So I already do that work. So I just want to continue that and make sure that that we continue that good work to make sure that faculty feel supported if they have any questions. And I work with a team on my campus, media services and the student accessibility services on our campus. And so we have a team, and we're there to support the faculty and the campus community. I put a little note that because of budget cuts coming, I don't know how that's going to affect. I've been working with my assistant buyer in the last month or so, and it's going to be tough because as much as I've been getting the word out that we're there to support people and that we can purchase materials, I might not be able to buy as many and be able to support the campus community. But, you know, it is what it is, and we're going to do the best that we can. The next slide actually shows some campus work that I focus on starting specifically this fall 2020. I have 2 opportunities that are going to come up. I'm going to serve on the Student Equity Committee. That was one of the goals, a very specific goal that I have for my Praxis for Equity 101 was specifically, well, maybe I should get on Student Equity Committee. And guess what? It happened to have an opening right at the end of the spring semester. And I'm on Senate. I'm a first-year senator, junior senator, whatever. So I'm still learning a lot about how Senate works and so on. And that came up. And so it just so happened that I wanted to be on it, and it so happened that it was open. So I said, I'll volunteer. Great, you're on it, cool. And so I'm excited, I'm gonna be on that. So that kind of like check mark on my Praxis. The second opportunity, I hadn't really thought about it, but because of COVID and just all kinds of things happening on our campus, we came up with, the administration and obviously Senate and other individuals came up with a program called Data Coach Pilot. And so what this is 4 faculty members that are going to work with the institution, institutional effectiveness, research and planning. That's what we call it on our campus, the data people. Does that make sense? The data people. These are the people that, yeah, okay. I didn't know that either. And so, you know, so I just wanted to make sure that people realize that that's what that is. So I've been chosen. I'll have release time. I applied for it. 3 other people also applied for it. And so I'm excited about that. Again, that was sort of one of those like, should I do it? I don't know. I want to learn. Oh my gosh, I got it. It's going to happen. And so I'm hoping that everything that I learned from that, I will be able to apply into then to the work that I do in the library. Department work. So that kind of segues right into possibly working on the instructional library program. We did our program review. I can't even remember if it was late December or early this year, but we did it. We went through program review and we addressed some inequities in terms of the groups on campus, the specific students, Black or African American, Hispanics, Latinx students on our campus that take our credit course, and there are some gaps there. And so we addressed that in the program review. So one of the parts of my plan is to be able to work on that and look at that. Possibly develop some curriculum. I haven't really touched this particular part of my Praxis because I want to work with my colleagues. This isn't work that I can do by myself. I feel like we need to be collaborative to do this within my department with the librarians that are my colleagues. And then I threw in there about the Data Coach Pilot Program to see the things, the skills that I'm going to learn from that opportunity and sort of inject that into that, into the program review. Critical inquiry and equity teaching, obviously, is important. And that's another thing that when you take Equity 101, you definitely do touch, it is touched upon. We do discuss it a lot in great detail, whether it's through discussions and readings. And so I want to further that. I said earlier that I still don't know all the theorists. I don't know all the individuals, all the people that have written really great articles and have published numbers of research studies. So I want to continue that because I really want to infuse that into the daily work that I do, my daily interactions, whether it's a reference chat that I'm doing, or the embedding program that we want to start piloting on our library. So just kind of looking at every day how I infuse equity teaching. Before I get into the other slide, I did want to sort of set it up where that I have further ideas that I'm going to put on the screen of what I came up with, and I think if I haven't articulated that yet, this is my journey, and I feel like it all starts with me, and I reflect a lot. I'm a thinker. I'm an introvert. I take time to think about things before I share them. And so through the dialogue in the Equity 101, I realized that I need to lean in. You know, I don't know if this is just a product of my discipline, that I tend to kind of be introverted and kind of think and kind of process things, or it's just a personal thing that I like to kind of take time to think about things. But I feel like what I've learned from Equity 101 is that I need to feel safe, and then I can share. And I think that happens a lot with our students, with our community. And so if I've learned to do that through my work through Equity 101, is that I also need to give the students that space, like to give them that opportunity also to feel like they're safe, to be able to share. And so it's been very transformational. The equity audit, everything sort of introspective to look at the things that I do. And I think it reminds me of a student of mine through the Puente program. If some people are familiar with the Puente program, it's basically a program that on community college campuses is where you guide students through mentoring, and you want to get them ready to transfer. And so it doesn't matter the ethnic and social economic background, anybody who wants to be in that program. And so a student of mine that I was mentoring shared, you know, I have a daughter, and I tell my daughter, so this is the student telling me, right, that she has her daughter, and she said, you know, I tell her and I teach her that sometimes things are uncomfortable, but you have to try, you know, that's how you learn, and you have to sort of lean into things, and sometimes it's awkward and there's awkward situations, but that's what you need to do. And so I learned from her, teaching her daughter about how sometimes we have to be vulnerable, we have to share, and we have to get out there and do the things that we need to do and find important. And so I feel like that was a huge learning, sort of one of those teachable moments for the teacher, was that students shared with me. And so, like I said, this is just a sampling of some of further Praxis, some of ideas that I felt like I wanted to share with everyone today. So critical inquiry obviously is very important for myself. Again, this is the things that I want to do for myself, or have been doing for myself. Self-reflection, self-criticism. Sometimes we feel like we need to do something perfect, and then, you know, feedback, we're a work in progress. I really believe that. I strongly believe in self-criticism, because not as a negative way, because I think we're taught that self-criticism is negative, but we can always improve. There's always room for improvement. So that's what I mean by self-criticism. Reflective dialogue, obviously, dialogue in general, like we're doing here, that I'm hoping that we can continue to do this after I finish the presentation. Action, my action plan or my praxis, right, is coming away with something like, what are you going to do? Once you take Equity 101, what are you going to do? What exactly are you going to do? And so you saw how I came up with lots of different things that either I'm already doing or I'm planning to do. Problem-based learning. This is something that I've been learning about, and this was important for me to throw in there because it was a specific way for faculty, for librarians to really help students, is to give them real life scenarios. And that's why I put problem-based learning, because it's important to have a specific way of helping students, and it's very giving them relevant examples, real world scenarios. Like if we couldn't be in a real world scenario right now with pandemics and COVID, right? But giving them real world problems, and then focusing on more student-centered process. So that's what I wanted to share. I'm looking at my time too to make sure. The equity practices list, this is just a sampling. I literally have a Google Doc with 3 pages of this. So it was hard for me to pull out some of the things, but I wanted to pull out something so that you could see that was another thing that we came up with in Equity 101. So like a homework, I guess you want to say, I don't know, or just part of the process in terms of like, once we first started the course, you need to start that equity practice list and start pulling some of those things and create that document. And so this is just a sampling. The first one, I know there's a lot of text there, but basically if you read through that, is if I'm comfortable with myself, the students will see that. The students pick up on everything. They know you're very transparent. And so I feel like if I'm approachable, I use humor. I try to. I'm not saying I am funny, but I try to use humor whenever I can to kind of soften it. That's not something that everybody can do, but I try to use it and just being honest. The idea that multicultural education or equity work is not rigorous. No, I personally don't believe that, and so that's why I have that there. Again, making people feel safe in the environment that they're in, whether it's a library, whether it's a chat, or whether it's synchronous session. Listening, being able to listen. Lauren touched upon that in the beginning about having norms and making everything safe, and being able to listen to everybody's views, and being able to learn and hear everybody out. And so those other two also are important. The multicultural education did start with Black studies, and that issues in general are not separate from what it is that I do, what it is that I do as a librarian. This is just some questions that I was brainstorming, just because I thought I could put some questions for you, all of you that are here listening and listening to my journey and my truths. But I think in general, educational practitioners like librarians, we need more dialogue. I feel like we're sort of outliers sometimes. I think we're the only librarian in my Equity 101. I don't know, Lauren, I think I was, huh? And maybe there were some counselors, and so I always gravitate to the counselors because we're very similar. And so sometimes it's hard because we don't have our own, even within our own discipline, sometimes we don't dialogue as much within our own discipline. So that's why I leaned in and I took Equity 101, and I wanted to learn from other faculty what they're doing. And I learned so much from them. And I think we're all responding to this pandemic crisis, but even before the pandemic and COVID, there was another crisis that was happening, and that's of equity, whether it's, students that need certain accessibility to certain type of resources, or just due to race and ethnic, question of ethnic and their backgrounds. So these are questions that I threw out. Are you ready for a transformative process? Are you ready to break from the current ideology of formal education, past teaching or training that you've had? I know I was. Are you ready to examine your existing practices? And are you ready for continued improvement? And so these are the things that that I came up with. One image that I want to leave sort of with, and then we can go into the next part. I know there's images of equity. We've all seen them in terms of like, there's it looks like they're children or people standing up on like these little blocks. I think everybody has seen that. We even shared it in Equity 101, I think somebody said. But I actually came upon another image that my husband shared with me about equity. And I pulled it up. I was able to pull it up. I was able to track it down. In terms of how I thought, yeah, this makes more sense. I mean, obviously these images that we see all through the internet or wherever, they don't necessarily solve everything, right? It's like, oh, okay, this is it, right? Everybody's going to be fine now. But I think sometimes images do speak more sometimes to us. And I think this spoke to me in terms of what I see. This is what I see, and I think, wow, that's definitely what happens and what I see every day. So I want to thank you for this opportunity. My name is Monica Lopez. I'm at Cerritos College, virtually, like a lot of us are. You can reach out to me if you have any questions about taking Equity 101, or if you want to know about my journey or some of the Praxis, I always have trouble with that, Praxis, or my action plan. mmlopez@cerritos.edu. I have set up Google Voice during COVID, so I think if you use that phone number, I think it goes right into my cell, so you definitely can do that. But I want to, again, thank Lauren and her guidance through Equity 101. And I know Nika was supposed to be here, but she also has helped a lot, you know, in terms of like my overall understanding of equity and the work that we want to do with our students and our campuses. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Monica. I just have to say that was amazing, and what a blessing and a gift that you've given us to get this window into your practice and your journey as an equity practitioner. I think oftentimes we look at folks who are doing this amazing work and we just don't know. And so to get this window in, you've helped to demystify that process for us and to show us, right, that we do have to, there's personal work for us to do, right? That we are individuals who are working in systems, and that, yes, we need system transformation. We also need to ready ourselves. So, wow, just thank you so much. And if you are on the recording or watching this on the recording, we're gonna say goodbye to you right now.